Agora, gente, um cara que ele é um engenheiro da Netflix, ele é um grande engenheiro da Netflix, como a gente pode observar, né? Eu consigo me esconder bem atrás dele. Mas uma parada que eu achei legal tá escrito isso na bio dele, não foi nem eu que pensei, falei, vou brincar com a altura do cara, né? Ele fala muito de empatia para a construção de sistema de informação. E eu achei isso, eu estou bem curioso para saber o que ele vai falar sobre isso. Com vocês, eu quero uma salva de palmas bem calorosa nessa manhã. Jem Young!
You mind if we do a little exercise this morning? Can you just look at the person next to you? Just look at them, left, right, it doesn't matter. Just look at them. Give them your biggest, silliest smile you can. It's silly, right? But science and studies have shown that if you smile, you're naturally happier. It's weird that if you do something, you'll be better at something. That's mind-blowing. Unrelated to the talk whatsoever, I just want to cheer you up because it's really early in the morning. In San Francisco time, where I live, it's 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. So it has nothing to do with the talk either. I'm just getting everybody warmed up because I got some time. So I've told some jokes. We've, lightened the mood a little bit. But I have some bad news. You're probably not going to like it. I am not a computer. No, it's surprising. I could be a computer, but I'm not a computer. Also, you're not a computer. Probably. A few of you. Not sure. But that's important because as engineers, what do? We spend all of our time putting our thoughts and feelings and emotions and concepts and dreams and hopes into a computer. But we're not computers. But a lot of time, the code that we write, it's for computers. This code, it's var a, and that's a prime number, and I don't know. But that's a lot of the code we write because we forget that it's humans that have to read our code. Now, if you asked me, I don't know, a couple of years ago, graduating college, how much time would I spend writing code? I'd say, probably a high percentage. 97% of the time, I'm just sitting there writing code. How much time would I spend reading code? Probably some low number, like 3%. But of course, this isn't true. We spend most of our time reading code, understanding code. Why is it that when you're in the zone, you're just racking away, someone comes up to you and says, hey, I got a question for you, you're like, Because we keep all the code in our head. We are little tiny mini computers, or we do the best we can. And we keep all of the code in our head, so when someone interrupts us, it's just gone. It's like pulling the plug. Because we spent so much time reading the code and understanding the code. And a lot of the code we read, sometimes it's other people's code. And if it's bad, you know it. You tell everybody. You put in Slack, maybe throw in a poo emoji. And you're like, how dare you? I spent a lot of time reading this code, and it's terrible. But sometimes it's our code. And then you feel a little bit silly. And our code changes because what we learn changes. I'm not the same person I was yesterday, and I'm a different person tomorrow. I'll be a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser about the world, and our code often reflects that. So what if I told you there are some strategies to say that it doesn't matter what you learn, it doesn't matter how you change, you can write bulletproof code. You can write code that anybody can read, code that you can understand today, tomorrow, 10 years from now. That's what code maintenance is about, because at the end of the day, that's what we spend most of our time doing, reading code and understanding code. So today we're going to cover 3 main things. We're going to cover what is maintainable code. And above all, why should you care? And then we're going to cover 7 meditations that you just think about. It'll make you a better coder. And I promise you, at the end of this talk, if you even take one lesson home, you will be a better coder. I promise you that. Doesn't matter if you're junior, doesn't matter if you're senior, doesn't matter if you're a CTO of a company, you will be a better coder if you understand just at least one of these lessons. My name is Jem Young. I'm a senior software engineer at Netflix. And yesterday I met a few people, made a few friends. They shared a lot with me. Their food, culture, language, obrigados. That's as much Portuguese as I know, I'm sorry. So because you've all shared so much with me, I feel I should share something with you as my future friends. So there's 3 things you should know about me. The first thing is I love Fast and Furious films. I am such a big fan. It's the silliest franchise ever. You know there's more Fast and Furious films than Star Wars films? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But you know, if you don't like them, that's cool. I will have a healthy debate with you later, because they're great films. The second thing you should know about me is, well, I'm much taller than I look from this stage. If you come see me after the talk, the first thing you'll think is, wow, he's a lot taller than he looked from that stage. I promise you, that's the first thing. And the third thing you should know about me, and probably the most important thing, is I'm lazy. I am a lazy engineer. I am the laziest engineer you might now know. But that's a good thing. As engineers, we should strive to be lazy, because what are computers good at? They're good at doing one thing. They're good at doing over and over and over and over again. And as a lazy engineer, I want to maximize that capability. I want to make sure that the computer is doing as much work as possible so that I can do as little work as possible. And being lazy means that I don't want to have to go back and fix my code 6 months from now. I don't want to go back and explain to someone what I was thinking at the time. No, I'd rather let my code do that for me. But it's easy to say, oh, yeah, lazy code, better code, blah, 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 blah. Gem's full of crap, doesn't matter. Let's look at a practical example. So let's say your boss comes up to you and she says, can you write me a function that counts to 10? And you think, yeah, I've been doing the JavaScript for a long time. I could write a function that counts to 10. So naturally, you start with console.log1 and console.log2. Okay, this part gets a little tricky. Console.log3 and so on and so forth. And this is technically correct. This is a function that counts to 10. But we don't write code like this. Of course not. Maybe when you first started programming, but we know better paradigms. We know better data structures. We know better ways of doing this. We write code that looks more like this. A for loop, a while loop, it doesn't matter. These are basic constructs that everybody understands. Does this take a little bit more overhead than writing console log? Yeah. But this is lazier because now I can just extend its function. If I want to count to any number, say 100, I don't have to change a single thing. The function before with all the console logs, I'd have to add 100 console logs. That's not lazy. That's more work in the long run. So this is lazy coding. You're paying the cost up front, so you don't have to do it later. I can tell you, as a lazy engineer, lazy engineers write good code. Put that on the wall of your office, your cubicle, your bathroom, maybe along with a picture of me going like. But lazy engineers write good code. Hashtag LazyJS. But it's easy to say, oh, good code. Ah, yeah, it's easy, hand wavy, doesn't matter. What is good code? Good code, it's really simple. It doesn't have to be shiny. It doesn't have to be sexy. It just has to have 2 main parts. It should be usable, and it should be scalable. That's it. Usable. Can you find and fix bugs quickly? Can you integrate with other code without breaking things? Is it a straightforward implementation, or do you have to wave down some magic incantation, read 10 pages of docs before you get to use it? That's not usable code. Scalable code, not just in terms of network efficiency, can it handle a lot of traffic? But in terms of people, can you scale to 10 people? Can 20 people use your code? Can 100? Did you use some weird design paradigm that every single person that onboards at your company, you have to spend 2 weeks explaining it to them? Like, here's why we did this weird thing. You've never seen this pattern before, but trust me, it's efficient. Well, that's not scalable code. So usable code and scalable code, the funny thing that happens when you start focusing on stuff like that, you find out that usable and scalable, it means it's maintainable. Because remember, at the end of the day, that's all we do. It's not all we do, but a lot of what we do is we just maintain code. We fix bugs. We add functionality. We understand the code. So maintainable code is good code. Now, let's look at our boring count function. In terms of usability, yeah, it's pretty usable. I call count, it's going to count to 10. Is it scalable? No. It only counts to 10. If I want to count to 11, I have to write a whole other function. That's not scalable code. Now, let's look at the lazier way of doing it. Is it usable? Yeah. It's just as usable as the other one. But is it scalable? Yeah. This will count to any number. 10, 11, maybe even 12, if we want to get ambitious. And you're thinking right now, Jem, you work at Netflix. You should be smarter telling me about, I don't know, higher order functions and observables. I could, but this is what's really important. At the end of the day, this is what makes your code, because it's the tiny little functions. It's these tiny code blocks that eventually they make their way into a JavaScript file. And you put these all together. Why? That's what makes up your application. It's the details that matter. Okay, lazy engineers write good code. We got that. But if you're not getting something, I'll tell you right now, it's hard to be lazy. It's an oxymoron, I know. It is difficult to be lazy. It takes more work up front to write lazy code. So because I'm lazy, I want you to all be like me. I want you to be lazy. So I'm going to give you 7 meditations, things that I wish I knew when I first started programming. I wish someone had come and told me, this is what you need to do, and your code will be that much better. And think of it more like a mantra, things that you know in the core of your heart that are true. And if you're thinking, I can't learn any mantras, you already know some. If I say top right, bottom left, immediately, what are you thinking right now? Anybody? CSS, right. It's CSS. Nobody forced you. You probably didn't learn this in a course. You just know it because you've done it over and over and over and over again. And that's what these lessons are about. Just doing things over and over and over again until it becomes ingrained, until every bit of code you write reflects the lessons that you've learned. So now let's start on meditations for code. These are things that, if you just started programming, good to know. These are things that if you've been programming for a long time, you should probably know. But it's okay if you don't. Let's start with something basic. What's in a name? Well, to humans, a name has a lot of power. But to a compiler, a name doesn't mean anything. The name we give a variable, why? It could be just a reference. It's just a reference to a memory address somewhere with some bits in it. The compiler does not care what you give it a name. Foo, bar, baz, gem, doesn't matter. But to humans, a name means everything. A name gives context. A name gives power. It tells me what you're thinking. It tells me what you want this thing to do. So when we give things poor names, we're just saying, yeah, screw you, future Jem. Good luck figuring out what this does. No, we don't want to write code like that. That's our first lesson. Very basic. Name things properly. Because when you name things properly, see that, oh, this foo function, it's called erify, very complex function. It adds to any string you pass it. Jem is super And if you're thinking, this is basic stuff, I learned this on day one, okay. Why aren't we doing it? I still see code that in production is foo, bar, baz. These things don't have any meaning. If you give it a name, I can instantly tell you, what are you thinking? What do you want this code to do? All right, okay. That was a little basic. Let's step our game up a little bit. Let's look at some complex code. How about code that looks like this? Have you ever seen code that looks like this? Yeah, I have. It's not pretty. And I got to tell you, it makes me angry sometimes. No, actually, it makes me angry all the time. And you're thinking, Jem, you're such a calm, peaceful guy. How can you be angry? Well, I get angry because this is insulting to me. Why would you write code like this? Because, you know, at Netflix, I work hard. I work really hard. And I try to stay in shape. Yeah, I try to go to the gym. And when I work out, I really, really try to push myself. I try to push myself at the gym as hard as I can. But above all, I try to write meaningful and constructive feedback to my peers and their pull requests. I try to be a friendly person. So when I see code like this, I just think, come on, I'm a busy man. I don't have time to understand what's going on here. That's me. I'm lazy. I'm not the smartest person here. You all are. You speak at least 2 languages. That automatically makes you smarter than me. And when you see code like this, you know that, well, calling index of on an array where nothing exists, that's going to equal -1. You know that. You also know that in binary, -1 is 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 all across the board. Obviously, right? You also know that the tilde operator in JavaScript is binary not, so it just flips all those bits. You also know that because JavaScript is 32-bit big endian, the leading bit is the sign bit, so adding a negative sign on there just flips that leading one. And of course, you know that 1 with zeros across the board, that's just -0. That evaluates the false. You all know that. I don't. And that's our second lesson. Avoid clever code. It is almost never worth it. The fact that I had to explain, or you all had to explain all that to me, and I've been doing this a long time, but you had to explain it to me still, means it's not worth doing. Is this code actually better than doing that? No. You might say, oh, Jem, it's a little bit faster. Yeah, but is it worth it? No. Avoid clever code. Okay, for our third and final lesson, can someone just tell me what this function does? Anybody? Come on, you all are smart. You just proved it in the last slides. No? How about now? A little bit better? That's our third lesson. Comment your code. Even without any sort of good names on these variables, we can see that it's a debounce function. Now, these are, we'll say, mid-level codes. You want to write senior-level codes, you just add a comment. Jump too far. There we go. Yeah. So now that, even if you didn't know what a debounce function is, you can just read the comments and understand. Comment your code. If you take nothing else away from this talk, if you just woke up, you're still waiting in line for that Mozilla coffee, you're just like, what? Wake up now and comment your code. This is literally the most important thing you can do to write more maintainable code. Write comments. Because comments, they're a form of time travel. I'm paying a little bit of cost up front, but in the future, you're going to understand what you're doing. Because 6 months from now, you won't remember what you're doing. All your cleverness, all your design patterns, everything you learned, you probably won't remember it because you'll be on to some other project. You'll be fixing some other bug, putting out another fire. Comment your code. Because above all, Be the engineer that you want to work with. What kind of code do you want to write? What kind of person do you want to be? Person who writes code on the right, person who writes code on the left. They both do the same thing, but one's saying, hey, I don't care about you. I just care about getting the job done and going home and playing Nintendo. The other one says, yeah, I'm going to take an extra 2 minutes and write these comments because I care about you. I have empathy for every single one of you. And it's not just code. Commenting helps everything. Even something like your imports. Commenting your imports, it just makes it easy to read. It takes another 30 seconds to do this, and it's just so much better. Comment your code. I've seen the difference between someone getting a job and not getting a job in their code comments. I read a lot of tests. You know, we send take-home tests. If you want to interview at Netflix, we send take-home tests, and I read a lot of them. And let's say you're smarter than me. You've already proven that. You're smarter than me. And you're using some design pattern that I've never seen before. Well, if I'm cruising your code and there's no comments, I'll just be like, I guess this is wrong because I don't know what's going on. Comment your code. And because I'm lazy, there's a tool that's going to help you out with this. If you're using a good IDE, let's say Eclipse, something like that, TextMate, there's probably plugins that'll help you write better code. I use Sublime Text, personal preference. There's a plugin called DocBlocker. DocBlocker makes it easier to write code. You type /** on top of a function, it just gives you a nice template to fill out. It's just that easy. Comment your code. Sorry, I get really passionate about these things. Okay, so we learned our meditations for code. We learned to comment our code. We learned to avoid clever code, and we learned name things properly. How about some meditations on architecture? All right, architecture. The shape of our code, the shape of our application. These are both equivalent forms of code. Which one tells me more about what's happening? Which one gives me more context about the code? Well, the code on the right, obviously. The code on the right, because I'm using variables and explicit data structures, it tells me a lot about what's happening. Let. I know that variable will be reassigned at some point in the future. If I see a const, I'm going to say, oh, I know that this variable will not be reassigned in the future. If I say, I want to use an int32 array, I'm going to use a signed array of numbers to represent my data. Yeah, it's functionally equivalent to the last code, but if you're deliberate in your choices, you're deliberate in the things that you do, it just makes your code easier. It gives you context and meaning. Okay, this next slide, it's a warning if there's any children in the room. This is not safe for work. Okay, everybody good? If you have a weak constitution, a delicate constitution, you should probably look away. Okay. Oh, that is not safe for work. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you have to see this. But what's going on here? They're mixing imports with requires, decorators with higher order functions, consts and their lets, defining a class and a function in the same file. Definitely not safe for work. That's not deliberate code. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what they're trying to do here because they're using all sorts of patterns, then it's not deliberate. Because if you ask any engineer, any real engineer, they'll tell you that it doesn't matter if you've been coding for a month. It doesn't matter if you've been coding for 10 years. If you're not deliberate in your code, then no one's going to understand what you're doing. You won't understand what you're doing. Come on. We can do better. Be deliberate. Be deliberate in your code. Okay, I'm sorry. That was a bit rough. It was not safe for work. I got a little heated because I care about what I do. So let's stir the pot, get some energy going. This little segment I call Great Arguments in Front-End History. All right, this requires audience participation. So what's a great argument that you've probably had over the years? One of my personal favorites, tabs versus spaces. Tabs? Anybody? All right. Spaces? Oh, all right, okay. That's a common argument. How about this one? Do you write your unit tests, do you put them in a separate file, or do you put them in line? Separate file? In line? Don't write unit tests? Shame. Write unit tests. Okay, last one, I swear. This one's fun. Inline CSS in the file or a separate file? Inline? Separate file? All right. I have answers to all these. I'm going to settle the debate once and for all. Get ready, okay? Get your phones ready. It's going to be good. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. At the end of the day, the hours spent arguing over these things, they're trivial. If you're consistent and you're deliberate in your code, it doesn't matter. It's all going to run the same on the browser. Because there's this weird concept about humans. We're strange. We're not computers, but we have the ability to spot patterns really easily. That's what humans are good at. So what's the next sequence in this number? 11. Yeah. Y'all are really smart. Way smarter than the last crowd. Okay, this one's a little bit harder. What's the next number? 10, thank you. Yeah. No. Yeah, that's not fair. You expected something because you're saying 2, 4, 6, 8, 71. That doesn't make sense. Because that's our final lesson. Be consistent in your code. Yeah, it's a trivial example with numbers, but this is the way our code works. If you're not consistent, I don't know what you're trying to do. All you know from me is the code that I've written. I could be dead and gone. I could be at another company 3 times removed. But all you know about me is the code that I've written. All you know about what I want to do is how I wrote it. So when we're consistent, it gives you this path to walk down. Be consistent. Be deliberate. And remember I said, I'm lazy. I want you to be lazy too. So there's 2 tools that I like for consistency and being deliberate. The first one is called Prettier. Prettier is a code formatter. It takes unformatted, kind of nasty JavaScript. It turns into the nice, formatted, succinct code. So it doesn't matter how you write your code. When you run Prettier, it's going to look the same for everybody. And this helps any future person coming to your company. It just standardizes things for you. Prettier is a good tool. The next tool I like is a linter. How many people use a linter? Okay, good. Everybody should use a linter. It is one of the best tools you can use. JSLint, ESLint, it doesn't matter. But the powerful thing about ESLint is that you can write extensions for it. So let's say you're like one of my colleagues on Netflix, Jafar Hussain. On his team, he says, no one is allowed to use let or var. You can only use const. Because they use React, and there's no need to mutate data. So he wrote an ESLint plugin to make sure that you can only use const in all your files. And if it sounds hard, it's not. That's 10 lines of code. You can do it too. If you have some opinion that you want to be consistent about and ensure that your entire team follows it, write an ESLint plugin. It's not too hard. Because the thing is, when we're deliberate and we're consistent, we start focusing up that pyramid to usability, scalability, that ultimately leads to maintainability. Okay, those were the meditations on architecture. How about some meditations on technology? Technology. So I have a captive audience. Nobody's got nothing left yet. Thank goodness. Thank you. I appreciate that. So it's a good time to throw out my resume. You know, just in case of some freelance consulting work. Jem Young, I'm on Twitter, @Jem Young, live in San Francisco. This is just a quick list of my skill sets, if you need any consulting work or anything like that. Well, this is not true. It's not true. I'd like to be all these things. We want to be as cool to write Redux. We want to write the next Angular. We want to be good at networking. We want to be the best designers, but we're not. We're not going to be, and that's okay. The best we can do is be really good software engineers, and if you start saying, oh, I want to be a good designer, oh, I want to be really good at low level, I want to know the 7-layer network model like the back of my hand, that's okay. You don't have to know how to build these things. You just need to know how to use the tools at your disposal. Imagine you're a chef in a kitchen. Any chef in the world. If you go to that chef and you say, hey, chef, like, yeah. Or, yeah. What are you doing in my kitchen? No, you go to any chef and you say, hey, chef, can you forge metal? Can you fold steel over and over and over again? Like, no. Of course I can't. But you know, if I give that chef their knives, I guarantee they can tell me what each one of these things does. They can tell me what they're good at, what they're bad at. You don't have to be good at everything to understand how to use the tools. And that's important. Especially in this world of JavaScript fatigue where there's a new library coming out every day. You don't have to use all of them. Understand what they're good for. Understand what they're bad at. And that's lesson 6. Understand the tools. Because let's say observables. I like observables. I work at Netflix. They're not paying me to say that, but we use a lot of observables. But I couldn't understand the nuances of, say, trampoline scheduling with observables. That's beyond me. It's clickers killing me. But I know that if I'm working with a lot of data, working with a lot of streaming events, I'm going to use an observable. I don't understand the low-level parts of the tools, but I understand when to use them and when not to use them. Okay, this next part, if you've ever seen me talk on YouTube or anywhere, you know that I've been traveling around the world talking about one tool in particular, one thing that I'm really, really excited about. I think it's the greatest thing ever. It's the greatest change since Ajax to come to JavaScript. That's the Humble Serviceworker, the backbone of progressive web applications, which you've heard a lot about yesterday. You'll hear a bit more about today because a lot of smart people much smarter than me, are saying this is the future of the web. This is what's going to change everything. We know that progressive web applications, they can intercept fetch requests. It can work offline. It can utilize web push to push data to the client. So as someone that works on Netflix.com and knowing how passionate I am about service workers and progressive web applications, guess how many are running on Netflix.com right now? It's a big number. Or a small number, depending on how you think of it. 0. 0. Would I like to use a service worker? Absolutely. Does it make sense for my use case? No. No. I don't do things because they're cool. I do things because they're practical. And a service worker, it's great if you have a lot of repeat visitors. You have a complex web application, but people coming to Netflix.com, if they're not logged in, they don't need a service worker. Because they're either going to sign up or not come back for another 6 months. And that's our next lesson. Understand the cost of things. Understand the cost of the tools that you use. Because there's a weird thing with JavaScript, in that the cost is often library complexity, but a lot of it's just the sheer size of the bundle that you're sending down. So what's the most expensive part when you first render a web page? It's not the paint. It's not the download time. It's the scripting time. For me, it's far more valuable to work on just sending down less JavaScript in general. So I'm not going to use a service worker. Someday. Someday I will, but not today. Okay, Service workers, a little bit nuanced, a little bit advanced. What about something like JavaScript frameworks? We all use a framework, probably. So right now, I will tell you, in what I like to call the framework showdown, hashtag it's about to go down, I will tell you right now the best framework to use right now in 2017. It's going to be a little controversial. You may not agree with me. Doesn't matter. You know, fight me in real life. No, don't do that. I'm a peaceful man. So which one is better? React, Angular, Ember, or the up-and-comer Vue? Anybody? Oh, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. If you talk with your team, you understand the tools, you understand the cost, you know that it doesn't matter. Pick the framework, pick the tool that you're most productive in. If you want to use Angular and you're fast in Angular, do that. If you want to use React, do that. It doesn't matter. We focus on the trivial things and forget it's about maintainable code. It's about doing things in the long run. So you're saying, Jem, I've listened to you, I've watched this talk on YouTube many, many times already, and I take it to heart. What now? What do I do now? Well, go out, give a talk at a meetup, mentor someone, write a blog post on Twitter, contribute to an open source project, help somebody, because the only way to get better is to push yourself. It's the first rule of chess. The only way to get better is to play a better opponent. Most of the time, that opponent is ourselves. Go help somebody. Challenge yourself. Push yourself. Learn something new. Move outside your comfort zone. Because that, at the end of the day, writing maintainable code, that's what's important. I just want to give a quick thanks to my team at Netflix, our Chana on the Developer Insights team, Matthew on the Site Ops team. They've listened to this talk way too many times. Special shout out to my manager, Ryan Burgess, who lets me go on adventures down to Brazil. And he's also the host of a podcast called Front End Happy Hour. That's where we have drinks and we argue about all things front end. Sometimes we get a little, but we have a good time. And right now you're thinking, it's the end of the talk. Jem, you've been going on and on, worked up a little bit of a sweat. How could you care so much about code maintenance? That's not sexy, code maintenance. I say, how can you not? How can you not care? It's what we do most of the time. We don't sit there and bang on the computer all day. We read code. We understand code. And at the end of the day, what you do is important. What you do is important. Otherwise, why do it? Every line of code you write is important. It doesn't matter you're saying, oh, Jem, I just do data entry all day, or I just build these CRUD apps all day. It's boring. It's not sexy at all. It doesn't matter. What you do is important. Code maintenance. At the end of the day, that's what we need to think about. Obrigado.
Cara, quem mais aqui se considera um desenvolvedor preguiçoso? Não? Vocês não são preguiçosos depois de tudo que ele falou? Pô, deviam ser, né, eu acho. Cara, eu gosto muito desse conceito da preguiça. Ele não deve estar entendendo nada do que eu estou falando, mas eu acho que ele sabe que eu devo estar falando bem dele. Eu gosto muito desse conceito da preguiça, né? A preguiça é a mãe da criação, a mãe da criatividade. Sem preguiça, eu acho que a gente ia ficar sempre ali, né, no braçal, escrevendo código do 1 a 10 a vida inteira. Isso serve para a vida, eu acho, né? Esse conceito que ele falou. Achei muito legal. Ele realmente é mais alto do que parece, é incrível.